Today at work, I overheard my coworkers talking about another coworker we have, more specifically about their gender identity. I live in Texas, where that conversation led to. I don't really like um, when people are just blatantly rude like that. Um, they weren't like they weren't saying insults. They weren't like, "Oh man, look at this guy." They're like they weren't saying slurs or nothing. They were just being disingenuous with their motives for the conversation. It felt like they were mostly just poking fun. And I do understand. I understand that when dealing with a person who is transgender or working with a person who's just different than you, I suppose, I understand it's very easy to notice those differences and communicate, like talk with other people about those differences. For me in particular, I don't really like that kind of conversation, especially about trans people, because I know people who are trans that are close to me, and I feel like for in that instance, it gives me a little bit of a unique perspective of kind of in the middle, where I'm not trans, right? I'm just a guy, but I'm also more understanding, more well informed on the topic than most people. You know, I know a lot of people when they talk badly about trans people or they just talk about them in general with somewhat of a negative bias in mind. Mostly it comes from a lack of understanding. It comes from misinformation. No one really knows what it's like because you're not that. To me it's similar to trying to talk about the black experience or the Mexican experience, like kind of like a racial kind of thing. To me, in some sense, it's a little bit similar trying to talk about that, trying to talk about being trans to people who aren't trans. In the same way I can't express the hardships I faced from being a Mexican growing up to someone who isn't Mexican, they probably wouldn't understand it. But if I were to talk to another Mexican person, there can be common ground. We can relate to each other. We could conversate. The same way maybe a trans person trying to like voice their trans experience probably can't get their point across to like a I don't want to say normal, but I mean fuck to like a just a regular dude. They probably can't get the same kind of response out of someone like that than if they were to talk to another trans person or maybe just another queer person in general. My coworkers have a group chat on Snapchat, which made me re-download the app, which I'm still kind of upset about. I feel like we could just text each other, but they talk on Snap, and I remember one of them sent a screenshot of this girl's name in the system. It's their like dead name, I think is the term, but it's like a dude name, right? And they're like, oh my god, this person is actually named this. And they're like, oh my God, that the term they used was she-males. He said, so many she-males have worked at this Papa John's. I was like, oh, I don't know if that's the term you want to use to describe like a real person, like an actual, like a person that you interact with. I feel like that term should not be used. When I heard my coworkers talking about that, or when I saw my coworkers in the group chat, I was like, the fuck is wrong with you guys? Kind of just giving them not really going too hard on them, but just being like, you guys are fucking weird. I don't like being the like that one woke friend who is like overly sensitive or some things. But to an extent, I feel like there needs to be just a quick little sidebar of, hey man, that's not cool. When I heard my coworkers talking today, I felt I remember I told my boss I needed to speak with him privately about it, but I never followed up with him because I was just too busy. And then when I was about to leave, he was on the phone. I was like, "Ah, I just want to go home." But I wanted to tell him like, "Hey man, there's a lot of discussion behind this person's back about them and about their identity, and I don't think it's cool. I don't think it's cool, not just because like, oh yeah, I know someone who's trans and that's not cool, but just in the sense of like, one, it's not really cool to talk about people behind their back, um, especially when it's something like not serious. You know, let's say if this person were to like commit a crime or were to like do something outrageous, like let's say they had a public stunt where they're like tight roping across two buildings. Sure, let's talk about them. But when it's something about just who they are and has nothing to like there's nothing to gain from the conversation. There's no actual discussion. It's just kind of berating someone versus like over their identity. I feel like that's just not really like what's you know like what's like really what do you gain out of this? You're just doing this out of the mean spirited nature, you know. What I'm trying to say today is that when you see something, say something, you know. I probably am gonna I see my boss next Thursday. I'll probably just tell him Thursday. But don't be mean to people behind their back. LOL. Respect trans people. Thank you.